another brand new edition of T Watches a Scary Movie. My name is T, and of course we are talking scary movies. I appreciate you tuning in for another brand new review. Remember, new reviews always go up every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. But as I'm always dropping numerous reviews throughout the week across my horror channels, the best way to stay up to date, not only on the Wednesday night one, but all the other reviews that I got coming out for you, is to get subscribed to my link tree. It's the easiest way to access all my horror content. And you can do that by going to linktr.ee/T Scary Movie. If you get subscribed to my link tree, that'll give you access to my YouTube page for the video versions of the show. Please hit subscribe there as well too. To your favorite podcasting platforms, the audio only versions of the show, hit subscribe on whatever you're listening to. And you can get access to my TikTok page for all my short horror content, including movie news, as well as me talking about reviews at premieres I just got a chance to see, and to my Letterboxd page for my written reviews and my movie rankings throughout the year. Hit those subscribe buttons no matter where you're at, folks. It helps me out bringing more horror content to all of you. And that includes tonight's review, because while I was trying to think about what I was going to dive into here in the month of April, you know, there had been a couple of movies I had been circling for a year or two at this point and just couldn't find a right time to really insert them into the schedule. But hey, April and May is prom season, so I figured what better time than now for us to jump into a couple of prom night classics. We are talking the 2008 remake of Prom Night. Tonight in T Watches a Scary Movie. And that wasn't a mishap on my part, what I just said here. We are also going to be looking into Prom Night 2, Hello, Mary Lou, on the Wednesday night show, which I know, like a lot of you, I love that movie, so I'm excited to actually get that here onto the show. And yes, I have looked at the original Prom Night before. If you're wondering why we are not doing that, as that would be an easy one for us to jump into, I'm going to throw that link right up there for y'all to take a look at in case you're interested in my thoughts on that one. But we're going to actually dissect that a little bit here, talking about this remake. So, if you came through the 2000s like I did, you know, I'm a 90s kid for sure, there's no question about that. But I also identify very much as a 2000s kid. And one of the things about horror in the 2000s was that that was absolutely the time of the reboot, of the remake, whatever you want to call it at that point. The 2000s was absolutely ripe with studios going back and cherry picking a lot of horror classics from the 70s, 80s, and 90s and trying to do a modernized version of those throughout the 2000s. Now, some of those really had a lot of success. It's easy to think of something like Dawn of the Dead that comes to my mind. That movie was such a breakaway success, and if you look at everybody that was involved with that, whether it be Zack Snyder or James Gunn or the cast and crew of that, and see what they're doing now for a movie 20 years ago, it's crazy to think that a reboot of an already fantastic zombie movie did that. But then in 2008, we got another remake to add to the list, this one taking one of the most classic slashers of all time, Prom Night, starring Jamie Lee Curtis, and looking to bring that to a modern audience. Now, it's always going to be a toss-up what you're going to get in a remake these days, because you could get something that's like a shot-for-shot remake, like Psycho, for example, that I know people absolutely loathe that movie. I love it. Gus Van Sant, I think, did good with it. I think Vince Vaughn makes a great Norman Bates as well, and it doesn't take away from the original, which is still there for you to watch. It's just modernizing it for today's audiences. So you have your shot-for-shot remakes, what a lot of people are going to look at and say, what's the actual point of those? Which, again, to reiterate what I just said, I think shot-for-shot remakes are very much needed, not for everything, but they do help older films become a little bit more accessible to modern audiences. And honestly, in a lot of cases, I would take that than somebody in this day and age going and watching a classic and shitting all over it because they just don't get the reverence for it. Everybody can have their own opinion, but you can't force appreciation into people, and I think that's where those shot-for-shot remakes end up being very helpful. Then you have those ones that are like reimagining of those original films, to where Their goal is to take that story and still adapt it for modern audiences, but they're going to kind of cherry pick those elements. Like they're going to keep the big ones and everything else really kind of gets tossed out. For example, Rob Zombie's Halloween's a great example of that. The Fright Night remake done by Craig Gillespie, if I'm correct there. Or even something like the Child's Play remake, which hit or miss depending on where you fall at in that fan camp. Massini for life. But it really depends on what you're getting out of your remakes for a lot of people to determine whether or not they're going to even give it a chance to begin with. And Prom Night is such an interesting choice because of the fact that it's a very straightforward slasher by today's standards, when you really think about that. The original film told the story of a little girl who's killed while playing a game with her friends, and the friends decide that they're going to cover it up at that point and not let anybody know. And years later, I forget exactly how long later, but years later, the twin brother of that little girl who dies decides to seek revenge on all the friends who knew about it, even though they were all children and didn't actually do it, but decides to seek revenge against all the kids who knew about what was going on. Jamie Lee Curtis is the star of it. It's a very different role compared to a lot of her other horror roles for Jamie Lee Curtis. While I appreciate the original Prom Night for what it is and what it did, my issue with it, honestly, was that at the time when I saw it, I was very much into a different kind of slasher. I very much enjoyed the whodunit and the clues being peppered in, trying to leave you guessing of who that killer is. And so I didn't really enjoy that original film too much. Love Prom Night 2. We're not going to talk about that one too much here right now. I got a review coming there for that. But when the remake came out, the remake was very, while it wasn't a whodunit, I thought it was actually more straight up. It was very straightforward to everybody that was watching of what was going on. The killer, Mr. Fenton, who is a high school teacher who is now obsessed with high school freshman Donna, played by Brittany Snow, has decided that his obsession, he's just going to take it to wherever it goes, murders her entire family, and tries to get a hold of Donna. He's stopped by the police, and 3 years later, Donna is trying to recover and live her life. It's prom night. She's seeking to enjoy, one last night with all of her school friends before whatever is going to happen. But surprise, Mr. Fenton has broken out of the mental asylum that he was sent to, and the only person who can stop him is Detective Wynn, played by Idris Elba, the cop that put him away years ago, who's back now to try to save the day. Now, again, the movie is very straightforward. Jonathan Schreck's Mr. Fenton is set up as the killer right from the jump. This is nothing supernatural. It's not going to be a whodunit. It is a killer is chasing this young girl and murdering anybody that gets in the way as cannon fodder. Now, that aspect, very well done. The movie gives you all the facts that you need, and I appreciate that. For the movies we were getting in the 2000s, some might have been a little bit too overcomplicated. I think that this narrowed things down the way that it needed to be. But where the rest of the movie goes is kind of the bigger problem. I think that there are obvious issues with the characterization of everybody else in this film, to the point to where you would think at the bare minimum that characters like Mr. Fenton or Donna or Detective Wynn would get a lot more explanation of like what's going on with them, because we barely get much reasoning behind Mr. Fenton's obsession with Donna and kind of why that drove him to do what he was trying to do. Was he trying to kill her? Was he trying to assault her? Like, we don't know that. And it's one of those things to where I think at least having a little bit more of what that drive was, what that motive was, would have helped. I don't need it explained, again, like a lot of other slashers out there, but missing Mr. Fenton's motive, it kind of just makes him a faceless villain at that point, and that doesn't serve Jonathan Schreck at all, who's a phenomenal actor. Brittany Snow, who has been amazing in the horror genre. She is one of my absolute favorites from X, which we're getting our third entry, Maxine. We got a trailer this week, and I so wish that her character would have survived to make it to that film. But Brittany Snow, who is absolutely a horror veteran, and that was kind of like at the beginning of her horror journey, whether you count Nip Tuck or not. But Brittany Snow's not really given much to work with in this as well, too, besides being a scared, traumatized teenager who absolutely, like, she's got her PTSD with the situation that occurred, but she's still not given that much to work with, because somebody that's gone through that much trauma, you have to wonder whether or not they would be there going to their prom at that point. Like, is that something that's realistically gonna end up happening? And I get it has to happen for the purpose of the story. That's literally what this remake is doing. But it's one of those things to where it would almost make sense, like, had she decided not to go to prom, and like Mr. Fenton catches her at home and then chases her to prom. That seems like that would have made a little bit more sense. And even Detective Wynn, played by Idris Elba, he's just not given much to do with this as well either, because obviously he's involved because he helped to put Mr. Fenton away, but we're not really given much else beyond that. He's there to grunt and be mad that, the cops aren't where they need to be and people aren't investigating certain things and information isn't coming late. Like, it's very cliched. And I love Idris Elba. I absolutely love the guy. But it's like, we have so much talent in this film and we don't really do much with it. And forget the secondary characters after that, because those three are supposed to be the main character and they're not given much. The secondary characters are literally just your high school stereotypes from any movie at all. The drama queen who wants to be prom queen and nobody likes her. Everybody makes fun of her, but she's gonna be prom queen regardless because she's a bit of a bitch. And then you have, the couples that are all about like hooking up. It's prom night. We gotta hook up, but are we gonna stay together after school is done? Because you're going to this school, but I'm going to this school. I'm not saying any of that is bad, but the problem is that all works out if we at least have an engaging story from our main characters, which we just don't get. So it's like a waste of these side characters that are in this, that like nothing really happens with them, and that annoyed the absolute hell out of me. And how do you have my man Lyndon Ashby, you got Johnny Cage in the movie, and you don't do anything with the guy? That doesn't sit well with me at all. Now, to circle back around, I had mentioned another remake, The Stepfather, which I believe came out the year after this. And what's interesting about that is the Prom Night remake, which was written by J.S. Cardone and directed by Nelson McCormick, is the same team that would go on to do the Stepfather remake a year later as well. The one with Amber Heard and the guy from You and Dylan, the guy from Nip Tuck, Sean on Nip Tuck. It's just kind of interesting because, again, there was absolutely a market for these remakes back in the 2000s, just taking anything and everything and hoping to make magic work. And Prom Night, while again on some very small fronts, it absolutely succeeds. The problem is that everything else just makes it collapse under the weight. This is not a prom king or queen finalist, unfortunately. Now, you got to check this one out for yourself and let me know what you thought of it. Am I wrong here? Is there anything redeemable about this Prom Night remake? Let me know, because I've defended this movie at times and I'm now being real with myself. Hey, it happens. Sometimes we got to take a hard look in the mirror there. But let me know in the comment section what you think of the Prom Night remake. I'm curious for your thoughts of it. If you haven't seen it, what would it take for you to go and check it out as well? And folks, hit that subscribe button, because I'm coming back with a review of Prom Night 2, Hello Mary Lou, very soon for you folks. But that's going to do it for me tonight. My name is T. We've been talking scary movies. Stay scared.
Boy here is a big fan of Fangoria. So, if you want to check out the world's best horror magazine that's out there, get a chance to get yourself your own subscription, which I just got my first one back in 2022 and I don't regret it for a second. But if you want your own Fangoria subscription, or you like the Fangoria merchandise, then head over to the Fangoria shop and use my link if you want to save yourself some money, folks. That's an easy one to remember. Just go to shop.fangoria.com/AXDEW. Again, that's shop.fangoria.com/AXDEW, or use my specific code AXDEW at checkout. You can save 20% off your entire order, and that implies to a subscription and to one-time orders as well. You don't want to miss out, folks, because with the magnitude of horror movies we've had released in the last few years, and with what we have on the horizon, Fangoria is going to be your #1 source for all that great, juicy, bloody information in the world of horror. So again, head to shop.fangoria.com. Hey! Hey there, folks! Thanks for tuning in to T-Watch This Scary Movie. I appreciate you checking out another review or movie news, whether we're talking movies, TV shows, books, or games, whatever, it's all scary. Remember, you can check out new episodes every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time on the YouTube page for video. That's youtube.com/c/Theron Reynolds Scary Movie. Again, youtube.com/c/Theron Reynolds Scary Movie. And you can check out the audio version on all your favorite podcasting platforms. Just search T Watch the Scary Movie or TWASM. Don't forget, my name is T. We've been talking scary movies. Stay scared.